I have never been surprised to find men wicked, but I have often been surprised to find them not ashamed.
Our species is so careless and indifferent not only to forego action regarding the obvious environmental threats we face, but to ignore them altogether.
The advocates of the free market economy argue that to be left to itself, unhindered by state intervention, the market will deliver the maximum good to society.
We often forget that the main purpose of criticizing is not to be negative, but to be constructive, to fix something. But general criticism is destructive, and it doesn't lead anyone to know how to fix things. It just makes people feel bad. We all have different verbal and visual styles, and conceive different ways to say the same thing. So unless you can explain specifically, you haven't started fixing anything. To help the criticized person know how to fix what you object to, define exactly what went wrong and why it is unsatisfactory. Specific examples for improvement, as well as specific descriptions of exactly what you mean, are a must. Some books on science are often too obscure or too specialized to do the general reader much good.
Many people find the hospital system too impersonal to help them cope with the trauma of finding out that they or a relative has cancer.
People of genius are too much superior to those about them to be quickly understood, and their books, music, statues, or pictures are usually too superior to be quickly appreciated.
The East Asian rainy season ends when the warm air mass associated with the subtropical ridge is strong enough to push the front north and away.
You must somehow be exposed to reading early enough in life to have it become a part of your daily routine, like washing your face or breathing.
Volunteers are so vital a part of the nation's economy, social atmosphere, and overall well-being as to relieve a huge burden from the public sector and promote a mood of cooperation in the community.
Only in the last few decades, primarily in the industrially developed economies, has food become so plentiful and easy to obtain as to cause fat-related health problems.
If a little knowledge is dangerous, where is the man who has so much as to be out of danger?
Masks are too heavy to uphold indefinitely, and no matter how well you believe you are disguising yourself, others always know.
The reluctance of the Chinese to perform surgery is completely understandable in light of their views about harmony and relationships. Health was dependent on the balance of forces in the body and the relationships between its parts. There were, and are for many East Asians today, relationships between every part of the body and almost every other part. To get a feel for this vast web of interconnections, look at a modern acupuncturist's view of the relations between the surface of the ear and the skeleton. An equally complex network describes the relations between the ear and each of the internal organs. The notion that the removal of a malfunctioning or diseased part of the body could be beneficial, without attending to its relations to other parts of the body, would have been too simple-minded for the Chinese to contemplate. Melting fats and softening other food particles, hot water makes it easier for detergent to penetrate them.
Playing a major role in the economic life of the United States, women currently make up 46% of its workforce.
A new metaphor initially makes people reflect on its meaning. Losing its novelty later by gaining popularity, it will give birth to similar types of metaphorical expressions.
Being employed on a less secure footing and receiving lower grants than their male colleagues, women in the field of science, engineering, and technology often face discrimination.
Having long sought to understand the emergence of expertise, artistic and otherwise, many researchers argued that exceptional achievement may simply come down to hard work.
Over millions of years, the ecosystem has developed an amazing insensitivity to violent natural occurrences, surviving even such drastic events as the impact of the Yucatan meteorite, which killed tens of thousands of species.
Globalization has touched the lives of everyone on the planet, altering not just international relations, but everyday life.
The early volunteers devoted themselves to hours of unpaid work for the poor and helpless, never minding that few appreciated what they were doing for society.
Only true acting can completely absorb an audience, making it not only understand, but participate emotionally in all that is transpiring on the stage, thus enriching the audience with an inner experience that will not be erased by time.
The historian, assigning events in the chronicle different functions as narrative elements, arranges the events in the form of a story, with a discernible beginning, middle, and end. For a building to be beautiful, there must be agreement among its parts. Buildings are choirs rather than soloists, possessing a multiple nature from which arise opportunities for beautiful consonance as well as dissension and discord. While certain buildings appear to have agreed on their aesthetic mission, persuading their many elements to pull together to make a logical contribution to the whole, others seem more conflicted about their intentions, their features pushing in contrary directions. In suburban neighborhoods, it is common for residents to establish rules for the external appearance of homes and gardens, so that a unified aesthetic may be maintained. They may disagree about their size, with windows, roofs, and doors clashing over questions of precedence. We could say that nothing in architecture is ever ugly in itself. Ugliness comes from being in the wrong place or of the wrong size, while beauty is the child of the coherent relationship between parts.
Referred to as the flying chair, the first elevator was intended to transport the king comfortably between the first and second floors of his palace.
Regarded by Hitler as so-called threats to German culture, hundreds of famous artists, including Marc Chagall and Paul Klee, were publicly named enemies of the state.
Sentenced to a long prison term, Gandhi was only set free when he fell ill with a serious medical condition.
Now considered a major poet of the 19th century, Emily Dickinson was unknown to the literary world during her lifetime.
Discovered a mere 150 years ago and manufactured commercially just half that long, aluminum today ranks behind only iron and steel among metals serving humankind.
Exaggerated by people throughout history, the very real genetic differences between races or genders are insignificant when they are compared with the similarities in our minds.
Every society needs heroes, and every society has them. Some heroes shine in the face of great adversity, performing amazing deeds in difficult situations. Other heroes do their work quietly, unnoticed by most of us, but making a difference in the lives of other people.
Teens, raised with a rapidly maturing internet and expanding cell phone capabilities, have much access to the world around them.
Patagonia's fantastic blue glaciers, registered as a World Natural Heritage Site in 1981, are rapidly melting due to global warming. Good open communication within an organization is like a strong and healthy circulatory system. Just as inside a living body, the heart, lungs, and bloodstream work constantly to supply oxygen to every living cell, the communication system in an organization supplies its smallest units, the employees, with the most valuable thing: information. Deprived of oxygen, the body's cells malfunction and die. Deprived of information, the organization's individuals and departments cannot work properly. To avoid malfunction and massive failure in the organization, it's vital to keep communication open.
Two languages being at hand, bilingual citizens have many cultural and occupational advantages.
Machines having taken over the work formerly performed by human hands, laboring jobs are becoming fewer each year.
Our adventures in space have been a hymn of national purpose for a half-century. The many high notes of success colored with gloomy tones of failure.
Distance learning can be particularly helpful if you are trying to pursue a degree while continuing to work full-time.
With their ability to network and communicate with each other, young people rely on each other's opinions more than marketing messages when making purchase decisions.
Machines may sometimes be troublesome, frustrating, and even harmful. Once accustomed to the advantages they provide, however, you feel that they are almost indispensable to your daily life.
Confident about themselves and their abilities, children who have high self-esteem are more likely to fulfill their potential.
A great questioner, Socrates was a natural philosopher, and many consider him the first moralist in that he urged people to question their own values and the very purpose of living by raising the concept of morality and a code of ethics.
When studying literature seriously, we acquire a pleasure and a resource we never lose. Although literary study may seem impractical in one sense, few people make a living out of reading books. In another, it is vital and necessary. Literature records and embodies centuries of human thought and feeling, preserving the lives of people who lived before us, who were like us and unlike us, and with whom we can compare our common and divergent humanity. And when we read the stories of our contemporaries, we gain first-hand insight into the hidden lives of people with whom we share this human experience. A composition in narrative style follows a chronological order, with one action following another, just as things happened in the original experience.
Some people feel uneasy if kindness seems to come to them with no strings attached.
With so many ethnicities represented in the U.S., you can explore foreign cultures without going very far when you are in the U.S.
Generally speaking, the more uncertain of success or easily sidetracked you are, the more likely it is that you will do an assignment or chore later.
Granting that there is perhaps no period in life quite as stressful as the first year of college, students can become more engaged in what they are doing when they see the big picture, and avoid being weighed down by the strains of their present circumstances.
Admitting that homeschooling is gaining in popularity, in many studies, it has been shown that students benefit more in a classroom setting since the interaction and dialogue with other students create a stimulating learning environment.
I firmly believe that all human beings have access to extraordinary energies and powers. Judging from accounts of mystical experience, heightened creativity, or exceptional performance by athletes and artists, we harbor a greater life than we know.
Speaking of rudeness, to be rude is not just to be selfish, in the way that children, until taught otherwise, and animals are instinctively selfish. It is a decision to ignore others that results in being alone. While most newspapers are discarded after a day, magazines can be kept for months and are often widely shared, which means that ads in magazines stand a better chance than newspaper ads of being seen and remembered. Also, magazines are printed on higher quality paper and allow for more colorful photography and artwork than a newspaper. Furthermore, many popular magazines are now published in a range of editions, with each edition targeting a specific readership or interest group, instead of being published in a single edition. For example, Time is published in more than 350 different editions, including one for doctors, one for teachers, and another for college students. Each edition attracts advertising aimed at a specific audience. Our happiness and our free self-expression is much more assured if we let go of end results. Work toward your goals and don't be imprisoned by them.
The famous expression, "keep your friends close, but keep your enemies even closer," was exemplified well in Nelson Mandela's attempt to learn Afrikaans, the language of his enemy.
One futurist predicts about healthcare that people will be monitored by healthcare robots that provide early warning signals regarding diseases and epidemics coming our way.
Many teenagers are being placed at risk of motorcycle accidents by insufficient safety education and practices.
By the 17th century, the Bastille fortress was being used as a prison and was rumored to contain hundreds of political prisoners.
For a long time, we thought that the appendix had no function, but more recently it has been thought that the appendix plays a role in the body's immune system.
By the early 19th century in England, traditional concepts of marriage, such as an alliance between families, a pairing on the basis of wealth or birth, or an arrangement made by parents, had been changed by the romantic notion of love.
By the time they graduate from high school, today's students will have been exposed to more information than their grandparents were in a lifetime. The existence of fossils had been known for centuries, yet it was not until the late 1700s and early 1800s that their significance as geologic tools was made evident. During this period, an English engineer and canal builder, William Smith, discovered that each rock formation in the canals he worked on contained fossils unlike those in the beds either above or below. Further, he noted that layers of sediment in widely separated areas could be identified and correlated by their distinctive fossil content. Based on Smith's observations and the findings of many geologists who followed, one of the most important and basic principles in historical geology was formulated. Fossil organisms succeed one another in a definite and determinable order, and therefore any time period can be recognized by its fossil content. This has come to be known as the principle of fossil succession. According to William Smith's discovery, when fossils are arranged according to their age, they do not present a random picture.
Some changes in the environment have been caused by natural events. Many more are the result of things that people have done.
We are witnessing a tremendous change in consumer behavior. That change is being brought about by technology and the access people have to information.
The fall in polar bear numbers can be attributed to the loss of sea ice due to its rapid thinning and melting.
Some of the difference in longevity between species is ascribed to the degree to which they manufacture their own antioxidants.
In general, since the transition from hunter-gatherer lifestyles to farming, the establishment of agriculture has been accompanied by the domestication of cattle and other livestock.
Tsunamis are often preceded by the retreat of water away from the shoreline, which lures unsuspecting beachgoers onto the exposed seafloor just before the tsunami arrives.
Steve Jobs is survived by his wife, kids, and 49,000 Apple employees, as well as millions of huge Apple fans who bought every single product he ever designed just to feel that much closer to genius.
According to John Adams, the phenomenon that safety measures, like mandatory wearing of seatbelts, contribute to careless driving may be accounted for by the notion that a greater sense of security tempts people to take more risks.
In Eastern Europe, the collapse of communist systems was followed by the creation of states with different structures in relation to religion. While the point of cleaning your house is to make it cleaner, the process actually makes things worse. Cleaning stirs up dust, hair, and other powerful allergens. Ironically, those who schedule their big cleaning of the year to coincide with the arrival of spring are leaving themselves doubly vulnerable because they will increase the spread of allergens inside their house just when the amount of allergens outside their house is peaking. Be prepared for the health drain that is caused by cleaning, and avoid taking on too big a cleaning task at one time.
Now that the economy is characterized more by the exchange of information than by physical goods, geographical centrality has been replaced by attempts to create a sense of cultural centrality.
Many of us are normally overcome with fear when we have to talk publicly, and that fear is caused by our own shortage of confidence.
Previously, Pyeongchang was outdone by Canada's Vancouver and Russia's Sochi in the contest to host a Winter Olympics. But it won the right to host one in 2018 at the IOC General Assembly in Durban, South Africa.
Annually, an estimated 16 million people are bereaved of a close friend or family member in the United States.
Many talented 20th century writers have been overshadowed by classical writers such as Charles Dickens and William Shakespeare.
Newton is credited with the determination of the force of gravity, creation of calculus, and identification of the mechanics of the solar system.
In Russia, men are outnumbered by women, and it is very often stated that it is an issue of luck whether a woman finds a man or not.
It is estimated that 70 to 80% of the oxygen in the atmosphere is produced by marine plants.
More than 18 million Americans have been victimized by ID theft and fraud over the past 2 years, which has cost U.S. consumers and businesses more than $100 billion. In the applied arts, such as furniture design and ceramics, an artist must be sensitive to the limits of physical laws. It is often taken for granted that this is not true for other artists, because the primary purpose of fine art is not characterized by function. Nevertheless, fine artworks do have many physical constraints, and artists who produce them must be just as sensitive to the laws of physics. A sculpture, for example, must be stable, which requires the sculptor to understand the properties of mass, weight distribution, and stress. Painters must use rigid stretchers so that their canvases will be taut, and they must understand the physical properties of their paints to prevent them from deteriorating, cracking, or discoloring.